Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Saying hi to my friend Robin. Tonight, I have the coolest Christmas slash New Year's kidney story to share with you. Tonight, our guest is Robin Johnson Gunther, mother of Mason, who is a pediatric kidney patient and a recent kidney transplant recipient. Mason is currently 9 years old, a redheaded boy whose kidney story begins when he was just a toddler. He was taken to the hospital after it was discovered that he was extremely swollen. He was then diagnosed with kidney issues, later subsequently diagnosed with nephrotic syndrome at the age of 2.5. And after that, more recently, sort of a drilling down a diagnosis of FSGS, focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. I hope I pronounced that right. Later, Mason was placed on dialysis, meeting at least 3 days a week, sometimes four, sometimes six. Mason had both of his kidneys removed, so dialysis was a must for him. Mason was eventually listed at the Kidney Transplant Center at the University of North Carolina Medical School. Efforts were made to find a living donor, but most candidates were disqualified. Because of Mason's numerous health issues, he and his family have been staying at the Ronald McDonald House in Chapel Hill. They they stay during the week. They float back and forth to home on weekends. Home is in North Carolina. They've been doing this for a very long period of time, and it's my understanding that this is a couple of 100 miles away. So it's some distance they've been traveling for a long period of time. Around the 15th of November, Mason received an offer for a kidney, but the kidney was disqualified. He also had a potential living kidney donor, but that did not work out because of connection issues. Despite all of these problems, the family's Christian faith has carried them through Mason's trials, and on December 14th, Robin received the call, and Mason was transplanted the same day. Things have been going fairly well for Mason. We're going to ask Mom about the follow ups and get more details. If you go to my personal page, pinned to the top of my page is the promo for this broadcast. In the comments, I have all kinds of information about Mason and his mom and their family. A couple of videos. Robin, you and I talked about that before the broadcast today. So all kinds of information that you can get there if you want to drill down a little bit. So please give a warm welcome to our friend Robin Johnson Gunther as she talks tonight about her son Mason. Robin, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Poor Robin's been staring at placards tonight that I've been hiding behind. So, did I state everything correctly in the introduction?
Yes, sir. You
All
did.
right. Let's talk about your family for a minute. You're a married lady, correct?
That's right.
And to whom are you married?
I married Mike Gunther, and we've been married since May the 10th, 1986. So 37 years we've been married.
Wow. Do you have children?
We had three sets of kids at one time. We have a 30-year old, a 32-year-old, a 21-year-old, an 18-year-old, and Mason is 9.
Okay. And today we're going to focus a little bit on Mason.
Yes,
Before we get started on Mason, you have a daughter, Brianna. Is that correct?
correct. I'm out here on the West Coast with her right now.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with Brianna?
Brianna was diagnosed with breast cancer at the end of July this year. Had a double mastectomy in September, and she ended up having to have lymph nodes removed in the left side, and she had that done in, let's see, I think that was in November, and she was supposed to begin chemo on Friday, But because she had some infection, they ended up having to go in and do surgery that day. So she goes back for her post-op visit on Monday, the 8th. And if all goes well with the post-op visit, she'll be cleared for chemo and will actually have chemo that day. And I'm here to be with her, after the surgery she had the other day. It was kind of rough. And then she recovered well. But, the emotional side of that can kind of get rough too. But she is going to I'll be taking her to Seattle on Monday, a few hours from here.
Okay. We got 28 people watching already, Robin. You have a lot of friends out there. Two of them that I can recognize. Bobby Reed is a good friend and a good friend of the show. And of course, our friend Donna is watching. Want to say hello to everybody. So talk to us a little bit about where you grew up, your education, and your employment experience.
I grew up in Holden Beach, North Carolina. I went to school in Charlotte, North Carolina, so close to home. I went to college for 1 year in Lynchburg, Virginia. And then I went to nursing school near our home at a community college. And through my early schooling years, I worked at a seafood restaurant. And then when I finished nursing school, I worked at the local hospital. And I was there for 20 years, and I did labor and delivery, family center nursing. They actually cross-trained us for antepartum, postpartum, labor and delivery, and newborn nursery. So that was what I love to do. So I was there for a while.
Okay. Let's talk about Mason and his kidney issues. When was Mason born?
Mason was born September the 1st, 2014.
Okay. And he's 9 years old now?
9 years old.
And he's the little redheaded boy that we've been seeing in the photographs.
Redheaded fireball, that's him.
Between Donna and I, we shared a few pictures,
He'll wear you out. He will.
When was Mason first diagnosed with kidney disease? Explain to us how that came about.
Well, through some testing, we found out he was born with it. And looking back at pictures after he was diagnosed, we could see that he did have that. But when he was about 2.5, I noticed overnight one night he had gained a whole lot of weight. He was just really puffy. And so I called our pediatrician, and she said to bring him in. She'd take a look at him. And so she checked him out, did some lab work, said to watch him. If it happened again, to call her back and see him again, do some more testing. So the very next day, he gained 4 more pounds. And so on a 2-year-old, that's a significant difference. He did not look like the same child. And so more testing was done. They did a ultrasound, and through the ultrasound results, they discovered that it was something with his kidneys, but couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. So that's when we got the referral to Dr. Keisha Gibson here at UNC at Chapel Hill. And so they did some testing there and realized he had nephrotic syndrome. A few months later, they tried to do a biopsy, and his kidneys were not developed enough to do the biopsy. They were too small. They couldn't safely do the biopsy. The biopsy would tell us specifically what kind of nephrotic syndrome he had. The symptoms led the doctor to believe it was FSGS, or focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. And so they treated it for that. And for a long time, it helped. He rarely had to go to the hospital, maybe once a year, if even that. So as he aged, and they told us early on that he would eventually have a transplant. It wasn't a matter of if, it was when. So we knew it was coming. We were thinking he would be much older than this. So that's how we got to Chapel Hill. And so about 2 years ago, he started getting the oral medications he was on at home weren't working anymore. He would have to go to the hospital for IV medications and infusions, and he would have to go once every 6 months, and then it got to where he was going. It wasn't even once every 6 months; it was more than that. Some months last year and the year before that, he was in the hospital more than he was at home. It was getting bad fast. So whenever his first kidney started, well, one kidney, they thought if they took that kidney out, it would help with the problem he was having, spilling so much protein, that it should cut that in half and things would improve some. And they knew that it was a temporary fix and let us know that too, but we thought it would give him some more time. And then last year, he, let's see, it was December of 2022 that he had the first kidney out. I'm forgetting this is a new year now. And so this year, he was at an appointment. The nephrologist here in Chapel Hill, or over there in Chapel Hill, I forget, I'm on the West Coast now. They have started coming to Wilmington, which is about an hour or 45 minutes to an hour from us. And so they now come once a month to see us. And so we don't have to drive to Chapel Hill every time he has a checkup. And so he just was, he had a good checkup. I was actually on the West Coast with Brianna for her first visit with the oncology team here in Seattle. And I got a call. We had a bad connection, and it was like, we need Mason to come in Friday. He's going to have his nephrectomy, his left nephrectomy. And I'm like, what? And I was trying to ask questions, and we got disconnected, and I couldn't call her back. And I thought, okay, she's got the wrong number. He had a good checkup today. It couldn't be him. And so I called my husband to make sure, and he hadn't heard anything about it. He had taken him to the appointment on the East Coast that day. And so I had emailed doctors, I had called, I had messaged, nobody got back with me until Monday. So Monday, I actually got up with the doctor and found out that his lab work that they had done that day at his checkup had come back, after the appointment. It was the next day, and they realized that he needed to have the other kidney out very soon. And so they had already scheduled that for the following week, just a few days away from where we were that day. So as soon as I flew back from Brianna's appointment, we repacked and came right to Chapel Hill. I actually had already set up appointment for his living donor at the time, Christy Cannon, to have her final testing done. She had a few more tests she had to have done. So she and I were already scheduled to be at the SECU house, which is kind of like the Ronald McDonald House for adults, right beside the Ronald McDonald. We already had a room there. And so I told Mike, I said, you just meet us up here, you and Mason check in the Ronald McDonald House, and I'll come over when Christy's tests are finished. So we got there on the 16th of August, and Mike came in with Mason on the 16th of August. Christy finished her test, actually after Mason was admitted, and Mike met us there. And the 17th is actually when they admitted Mason for his surgery to have his nephrectomy, so he could have all of his pre-op tests done that night. And they did the surgery, taking the kidney out the next morning on the 18th.
Okay. As I understand it, Mason was initially diagnosed with nephrotic syndrome, but as you and I were talking before the show, a more specific diagnosis would be FSGS. Can you tell us a little bit about what Mason as a patient has been like with FSGS, what your worries and concerns have been?
Yes, his weight would increase. He would get really puffy in the face. Sometimes it would be his chin, sometimes his legs, sometimes his belly. It would be different areas, and it's like the extra fluid would just accumulate wherever the least resistant areas were. So it would go out in the tissues somewhere. The kidneys got to where they weren't taking care of it like it should, and it was just getting worse and worse. But so he would swell like that. He would have high protein in his urine. I was having to check his protein and his blood pressure and his weight every day. Of course, his weight would go up because of the swelling, and he would have the urine would get foamy. That's how you can tell when it's got protein in it. But we would actually dipstick it and see how much was in it. So those are some of the signs. But sometimes he would be so swollen he couldn't walk, or he would have pain in his legs. There's so many different ways it can affect you, but those are the main things that we would notice whenever it was time to go to the doctor or call the doctor and do whatever she had us do, go to the local hospital or bring him here at Chapel Hill.
Okay.
Chronic syndrome is like a more broad spectrum diagnosis, and the FSGS, which is actually found by a biopsy, is the only way they can tell. is the specific disease that his kidneys have, where the kidney filters are scarred and they don't filter the urine like they should. Things don't get filtered out, cleaned out like they should.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Mason's dialysis experiences for a minute, Robin. I understand Mason was placed on dialysis. Can you tell us when and where that occurred and approximately when he started?
Yes, he started dialysis on August the 19th, the day after he had the last kidney removed. And he has been having dialysis. His routine was supposed to be 3 days a week. But his kidney was getting worse. Hang on just a minute. It was getting worse. Everything was getting worse, and they were having to do dialysis 3, 4, 5 times a week. And then the week that he had the transplant, the early part of that week when he went in on Monday, it was getting so bad, just with the way he was handling dialysis and not peeing like he should, and just having a hard time with that. And so what they ended up doing, they scheduled him for 6 times a week that week. And 4 days later, we got the call for the transplant. So it could not have come at a better time. He was going to
Okay.
end up having to be on dialysis every day if he hadn't got the transplant.
Okay. And as I understand it, he was on a catheter and doing in-center hemodialysis. Am I correct about that?
He had the central line port in his chest, and it like comes up in his loops up in his neck and goes to his right before his heart. And so he was having the hemodialysis as an inpatient.
Okay. When was Mason first listed for a kidney transplant?
First listed for a kidney transplant in April of 2022.
And this is at the University of North Carolina Medical School, the Division of Nephrology and Hypertension.
Yeah, it's University of North Carolina Healthcare. UNC Healthcare is the name of the hospital.
Okay. Mason's transplant coordinator there was Amy Woodward. Is that correct?
Woodard, yes.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about the efforts that were made to try and find Mason a living donor.
Okay, so what we did, and they encouraged us to do this, was to tell people about it. And an easy way to reach a lot of people is through social media. So we made a Facebook post about Mason's story and included Amy's contact information on that. So anybody that was interested, we would just give them her information, and of course they had to contact her. We couldn't have anything to do with that contact. So a lot of people reached out to her through those posts. People shared those posts. I don't even know how many people called to be tested for him. We knew that there were several in the queue, but they don't tell you how many. And through efforts from the Ronald McDonald House, we actually spoke at a fundraiser telling Mason's story, not only to raise funds for Ronald McDonald, but also to get Mason's story out there and let people know that he needed a kidney. And that you could be a living donor. Some people think you can only donate after you die, but you can be a living donor. And so it was to get that word out there. And so we did that. WRAL News Center in Raleigh also did a news interview with us to get the word out there. And that was posted first on the night. And by that morning, they already had hundreds of calls of people wanting to be tested for a donor for Mason, for a living donor. And the following week, the transplant coordinator actually called us and said, Robin, y'all have got over 500 calls. People wanting to be tested, see if they could donate for Mason. And I think 50 of them had already turned in their paperwork online. And I think there were 13 that they had to turn down because of the wrong blood type or whatever medical reasons they had. And then the rest of them were added to the queue to be tested. So there were plenty of living donors to be tested, but it also takes a long time for the testing process to be completed. Because of insurance, they can only test one potential donor at a time. So that kind of slows everything down. But it is better if you can get a living donor because the body accepts it quicker. it starts working pretty much right away, and they last like 2 times longer than a deceased kidney would. So that's what we were
Okay.
hoping. But God knows what He's doing, and this was a kidney that came at the time we needed it most.
All right. I understand you've had quite a bit of help from Donna Tissot.
Yes, Donna has helped post and share Mason's need and ways to help him. And people have even sent cards and birthday gifts. He's had a birthday since we've been up here, and he's been spoiled. But she has really helped get the word, and not only get the word out about Mason, but also to share the need of being a living donor. Or even if you can't be a living donor for Mason, you could still do like the paired kidney exchange program, where it's kind of hard to explain. But if I wanted to donate to Mason, but I wasn't a match, I could donate a kidney, and somebody that I was a match for could get that kidney, and another kidney that would match Mason would come to him. So they can work it that way too. So she
Okay.
helped get a lot of awareness out about all those methods to be a donor. She was big help, big encouragement. She's done a lot.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about your experiences with your family living at the Ronald McDonald House near the university. How
Uh,
far is that away from where you live in North Carolina?
and it's just less than in North Carolina. It's about the same distance as the hospital actually. So it's about 3.5 hours away. But
Okay.
it's like less than 2 miles. It's been very
All
convenient.
right. And I'm sorry, how long have you been living there?
At the Ronald McDonald House, we've been here since August the 16th.
Okay. And I understand the family's there during the week and you commute back and forth on the weekends?
Not every weekend. The weekends that Mason is well enough, we do, which has not been very, very often. We did get to go home Christmas afternoon, no, Christmas Eve afternoon, and we had to come back Christmas afternoon. So we were home for about 24 hours for Christmas. And we haven't been home since then. And we had not been home before Christmas, probably for a month.
Okay. At this point in time, have the doctors indicated to you when Mason will finally be able to return home?
Well, he was discharged from the hospital today, and he's got a few more appointments coming up. They didn't want us to go home this weekend at all. But after these appointments, this next week coming up, we should know pretty much exactly. It's probably going to be within the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'm thinking it's getting really close. Mason's
All
so excited
right.
to go home so bad.
Want to give a shout out to my friends Kent Bressler and Jonathan Trailer. They're from our good friends at Kidney Solutions. So thank you guys for checking in. And we'll talk a little bit more about Kidney Solutions near the end of the broadcast. Can you please describe for us some of the medical issues that Mason had before your family entered the Ronald McDonald House?
It was the same kind of stuff we've been having. It was just like every day. He just wasn't getting a break. He was swollen every day, uncomfortable, sometimes in pain. But a lot of times his attitude, well, most times his attitude was always good. He was always meeting people, talking to people, ready to play. Anything that's got wheels on it, he's ready to go ride. But he did have bad times that people didn't see. He was just really uncomfortable with the weight gain, all the fluid, and then he was having to go to have labs 3 times a week before he had his ports, even so he had to be stuck at least 3 times a week. Plus he had a shot he had to get 1 time a week too. So he was on a lot of medicine and stuff, and sometimes even with all that, we still ended up going to the hospital and staying for 3-4
Okay.
weeks.
I want to let our audience know, if you go to Robin's personal page, Mason has left a video on there for all of us. So thanking everybody, and you get an idea what a great kid he really is. And this is why I enjoy doing pediatric kidney broadcasts so very much. It's just interesting to see the similarities and the contrast between me as an adult patient and someone like Mason who is a pediatric patient. So you get a chance, you might want to check that out. I understand that around the 15th of November, a kidney transplant offer was made for Mason. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Yes, that actually went on for 2 days. We had an offer, then it rescinded for a health reason, and then we had another offer that was rescinded, and then on the 15th, we got an offer, and we were actually brought in, and he was admitted to the transplant unit. And at the last minute, it was also a deceased kidney, deceased donor kidney, and so they periodically check labs to make sure everything's still the right levels to be used for each individual patient or whichever one is to be designated to. And the test that they did while we were there in the transplant unit ended up coming back with a really high creatinine level, and Mason's creatinine level was already sky high, so he was not able to use that, and we were that close. So we went back to the Ronald McDonald House that night, just had them discharge us, and like they call that transplant emotional roller coaster, and it's real. I'm telling you, it's something else. I can't even describe the emotional, with each call. It just, you get your hopes up, and it's finally going to happen, and then no, it's not. Mason was so excited with the first call. Oh my goodness, he was so excited, and then we got the call where it wasn't going to work. I would have cried.
Take your time.
But yeah, it's like with each call, he just like he didn't even care anymore because he just didn't want it to work. And then when we finally got the call, he just couldn't believe it. When we were on the way to the hospital and they admitted him, he's like, "I'm getting a kidney. I'm really getting a kidney."
Okay. Let me make sure I understand. There was an offer made on 15th of November. There was one person ahead of Mason. Turned out that person was an adult. The kidney was not suitable for an adult. So the offer was made again to Mason. The kidney was actually sent to the center in North Carolina on Chapel Hill. Unfortunately, when it got there, the doctors determined that the kidney had protein in it, creatinine, and wasn't suitable for Mason as a patient. Is that a fair summary of what happened?
Right. Yes. His creatinine was already too high.
Okay. And it must have been difficult for you and difficult to explain to your son.
And he gets it. He understands.
Okay.
It's a big letdown, and he just knew this one was going to be the one. It hurts, but you know what? We always knew that God had the right one coming for him, and we didn't want one if it wasn't the right one. And so I made sure he understood that.
All right. You've mentioned a few things that went on. There have been some challenges for Mason and your family since you've been on Chapel Hill. November 21st, Mason's dialysis treatment was cut short because he got sick. Yes. December of 2022, he had his first kidney removed. He ended up having a double nephrectomy, the second one, August 18th of 23. He did have a previous living donor who wanted to donate to him, but she ended up being ruled out. He's had a whole bunch of sick days where he required extra dialysis. You mentioned there was 1 week that he was actually on dialysis 6 days that week. And to top all that off, he's had swelling, he's had seizures. How has your family dealt with all this?
We take it one day at a time, and we know that God has a plan, and we have to trust in that. Sometimes we don't like it at the moment, but we know, the best way's coming. And Mason he's so resilient. He just has the best attitude. He doesn't let it get him down. And if it does, it's not for very long. He has his bad days. And during that time, I forgot to mention that he actually was admitted to the PICU twice, the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, where he had to have 24-hour dialysis a few times. So he couldn't get.
Okay. You've mentioned your faith and Mason's faith sustaining your family through all these issues. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Why has that been important to you?
I mean, that's what gets us through it. If it wasn't for that, I don't know how we would get it through that. Because we can always lean on God because He's there for us, and I think it's made our faith stronger, to tell you the truth. And Mason is seeing that, and I think other people are noticing that. I mean, we didn't mean for it to be that way, but but that's just how we are. I mean, we got that relationship there. We can trust God even in the hard times. And I'm not saying that it's been easy, because it hasn't, and there's been plenty of tears. And but we knew better days were coming. We did.
Excellent. It's my understanding that Mason's story was in the newspaper, aired on WRAL radio station. There was a video made. Literally, many people responded to donate to Mason. And just, I want our audience to know the videos that Robin's been talking about. The links to those videos are in the comments to the notice that I gave of this broadcast on my Facebook page. So if you're interested in checking those videos out, they're available. What was it? How did you feel? What was it like? All these people responding, trying to help Mason.
It is overwhelming. It is so overwhelming. And everybody that messages us or sends cards, they always say that they're praying for us, and we know that there's people out there. We can't even fathom how many prayers have gone up for him. I just can't believe it. It's incredible.
It's okay. It's okay, Robin. You're with friends. All right. It's okay. You're with friends. Your Uncle Jim's going to take good care of you.
This is a reality show, right?
Yeah.
Well,
In fact, I was going to mention, you mentioned cards. I saw on your Facebook page there was a map of the United States with pins in it,
yeah.
where Mason had been receiving cards and Christmas cards and gifts from people all over the United States, and he was pinning those locations in the map. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
As a matter of fact, if I had not been on the West Coast and we were doing this from Chapel Hill like we had planned, I was actually going to show that map. A teacher friend of ours actually is a member of an international teachers group on Facebook, and she wanted to know if it was okay if she shared Mason's story, and if it was okay that she sent us a card, a court map of the United States. And she sent me a packet of the push pins, and she said, I want you to put a pin on every state that he gets a card from. Well, then it kind of like went international. He got cards from China and Japan and the UK, Sweden, Germany, London, just everywhere. It's like I can't even remember how many, but I've written each one of them down the side of the map and put a pin there too. So I need to get like a world map and do that. So everywhere we got a card from, we would put it down. And I even had a notebook. If he got like more from another state, I would like make a mark each time he got one from that state. So it's pretty cool. So he's filled the map up on the United States, and he's got so many other places pinned on that map. It's crazy, but it's pretty cool to look at.
Yeah, I thought so too. I understand that you received the call, what us kidney transplant people refer to as the call, around December 14th concerning Mason and a kidney that was available for him. Can you tell us a little bit about what went on there?
I can. So we were asleep. It was getting close to time for us to wake up to go to dialysis. Still dark outside, phone rings, and the doctor had actually texted me a few times looking back and said, I'm getting ready to call you. Make sure you're going to be awake. Make sure your phone's on. Answer the phone. She said, okay, I'm calling you now. And so I happened to wake up and get the phone, and she's like, Robin, this is Dr. Westrike. I need you to wake Mason up. Take him to the emergency room right now. Call me when you get there. I'm like, okay. And I hung up the phone. I didn't even ask her why. I just knew. And so we get dressed real quick and run over there. And I call her when we get to the emergency room. And she's like, tell them to do a COVID test right now. Do a stat. And so I did. And they were pretty quick about it. And she said, if his COVID test is negative, he will have the transplant today. And I still get chills when I say that. So his COVID test was really quick. They let him do it himself, actually, and it came back and it was negative. And the reason he got this kidney was because the person ahead of him tested positive for COVID. And Mason tested negative. So by 11:30, he was in the he was in the operating room having his transplant. And Mike actually had to take him back there. Mason's got a thing about being put to sleep. I don't know why it scares him. I mean, it scares me too. So I guess they can start that fear early on, but he just does not like to be put to sleep. And he was just giving them a fit about that. And so they actually had Mike dress out in the scrubs and carry him in his arms back to the operating room. And they actually saw the kidney that was going to be put inside of him. And it really touched Mike when he was telling me about that. And he started crying because that kidney was going to be what was going to save Mason's life.
Take your time, Robin. We got all night.
So Mike came back and told me about that, and they called a little bit and told us that Mason was in surgery and that he was doing well, and would call us and update us again before he left surgery, and then they would call us from the recovery room when we could see him. And they said he did great, and in the operating room he already had some urine in the catheter bag. Wasn't a lot, but there was some there, which was more than he'd had in a long time, you know. And so he finally came through the surgery, and we met him in recovery. It took a little while to wake up, but he did, and he did great. He was great. It was an experience that you can't really explain unless you're there.
Okay. You mentioned that Mason was admitted and administered a COVID-19 test, which he passed with flying colors, correct? And your husband, Mike, had to get dressed up in OR garb and actually carried Mason down to the operating room, actually saw the transplanted kidney.
Yes.
Correct?
Right.
And the operation took about 4 hours.
Right.
And actually, at one point in time, you guys were able to see blood going into the new kidney.
Yes. Well, let me tell you this. Mason actually saw the kidney too, because after he got back to his room, one of the doctors came in, he said, I saw you messing with that kidney. So he saw it too. But yeah, so they did, it wasn't long after they got him to the pediatric intensive care unit after the transplant that did an ultrasound just to make sure the blood was flowing through the kidney and everything was working as it should. All the connections were right. And, you know, they could tell that through the ultrasound. And just to see that on the screen with that urine flowing through that kidney, that somebody had to die to him.
Okay.
It was a miracle. It was incredible.
Yeah. This is why I love doing broadcasts about pediatric kidney patients. You know, I'm really pleased that you're sharing your story with us, because I want people to understand that children get this disease too. Yes. And they have to go through some of the same things that we go through as adults. Plus, they have their own issues that they have to deal with as children. And it's important to understand that pediatric kidney patients deserve the same opportunities that adults do. That's why I do broadcasts like this one, Robin.
That's good. That's right.
So, and it's my understanding that when the operation was done, that Mason's new kidney was already making urine. Is that right?
It was. It wasn't making a lot like they wanted it to, but it was making it. And kidneys, some kidneys are slower to wake up than others, and his was a sleepy kidney going into it on the first few days, but it's caught up. One day they had started increasing his oral intake to 2 liters a day. The first day, his kidney put out 2 liters of urine, which was awesome. The next day, he drank the 2 liters. His kidney put out 4 liters, and so then he got dehydrated and had to go back to the hospital for a little while. But they said once it starts working, it's like the floodgates open. So thank God it's working. It's working.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about how this transplant came about. This was a donation from someone that wants to keep it a secret. Is that the idea?
Well, they don't allow us to communicate with each other at the hospital, or they don't have anything to do with that. And they try to keep everything separated. But then they also, in our transplant, they give us a big notebook with all kinds of stuff we have to read, and there's a folder in there where they do encourage you to contact, write a letter to the donor family, and they encourage that, and so we are going to do that. They don't share contact information unless the donor family, I think, wants to, and then they'll let us know.
Okay, so this was a deceased donor transplant.
Yes.
Okay. And there were some complications after transplant, high blood pressure. You mentioned low urine output, low oxygen levels, some swelling. Of course, there's always a concern about the FSGS, so our audience understands. Sometimes that translates back to the transplanted kidney. And I think you've mentioned Mason had a kidney biopsy post-transplant too, didn't he?
He had that yesterday.
Okay. How did that go?
It went well. The procedure went well. He tolerated it well. He had to be put to sleep for that, but he actually did not get scared. He did at first, but then he actually went willingly to the procedure. We have not found out the results yet. We should find out Monday.
So somebody in our audience wants me to mention that Mason is the Uno champion of the family.
He is. He is. He beat me one day 8 times before I won once, and he plays with the doctors, nurses. He plays with the auxiliary people there, the lab workers, the nursing. He play with anybody that'll sit down on it and play with him, and he usually wins. Stinker.
Oh, he's tough.
Yeah.
You're going to play Mason at Uno. You better show up ready to play.
Yeah, he gets it. He understands those cards. I don't know how, but I know it's not a lot of chance. But you got to strategize when to play what. He gets it. It's something else.
I understand that Mason's currently undergoing plasmapheresis too. Did I pronounce that halfway right?
Plasmapheresis. Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, it's a hard word. I can't say it sometimes. Yeah.
But he's due to go home pretty soon.
He's due to go home pretty soon. He has a few appointments coming up next week, so we're going to stay for at least another week or two. And he'll be getting last week was supposed to have been his last plasmapheresis treatment here at the hospital. But anyway, he had to have a makeup one since he didn't finish the one last week when he got admitted, or earlier this week. And so he's going to start having those every Monday for a while. And they're going to schedule those the same days he has to come for his checkup with his nephrologist. He'll be coming for once a week for a while. After this week, I think that's going to start. So hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, he should be home.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Does Mason's new kidney have a nickname?
Originally, he had named it Pee-wee because that's his papa's nickname for him. And then as it got closer to Christmas, he said, I think I want to change it to Rudolph. So he's been calling it Rudolph.
Okay. And just so folks know, Christmas just happens to be your birthday.
It is. Yes. I'm not going to tell you how old I am.
No. I'm not going to ask that. My mother told me I'm never supposed to ask that. Oh, my God. She might come back and beat me up. Tell us how Mason's doing now? What's his current condition?
Well, as of today, he's doing great. They caught the flu really early, and so he never really had any bad symptoms. The first day when they diagnosed it, his temperature had been low that morning, like 96.7. His blood pressure had been really low. It was like 66 over 50 or 33, I think is what it was. And then when we got to the plasmapheresis that day, his blood pressure kept dropping, and his temperature spiked to 100.8, which wasn't too high, but it was a big difference from what it just had been so low, which low temperatures in children is also a sign. So they were thinking that it might have been a viral infection. And so his blood pressure dropped as low as 53 over 32, which is very low. So he wasn't feeling good that day, but now he's feeling great. He's like a different kid today. His color's better. He looks great. He wanted to go home really bad so he could ride that new Jeep he got for Christmas. That was a community effort, so cool, but he'll be home soon.
My friend and friend of the show, Willie, wants to say hello. Willie used to play professional football for the Pittsburgh Steelers, among others. So Willie's been on the broadcast. He's a great supporter. Thanks, Willie. We appreciate you checking in. I want to give you a chance to make some final statements, Robin, about your experiences with Mason, or any advice that you can give to the parents of other pediatric kidney state patients. Is there any advice that you can give to those parents?
Yes. So when your kid has kidney disease, just be in tune to his body. Be in tune to what he looks like, what he feels like. When he gains weight, when they gain weight like that, you can feel it. You can definitely see it, especially when they're younger. But when you get the diagnosis, and you have all the medications and the things you have to do, the labs, the weights, the urine checks, the blood pressures, all that stuff, don't do it. Don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Um, Pray for that living donor if you can get it. But the deceased donor kidneys work too. And also, not so much for the parents, but for people out there, be an organ donor. Be an organ donor. Even look into kidney living kid. I'll get it out in a minute. Living organ donation. Be a living organ donor, or just be put on your driver's license. You want to be an organ donor when you pass away. Either way you can do it. Organ donation is amazing. It saves lives. My dad was an organ donor. When he passed away, they were able to use his corneas, his skin. People don't even think about donating stuff like that, but you can donate that stuff when you pass away, and it helps people that would be blind to see. Burn patients. It helps them to regrow skin. There's just so many things that you can help that you don't even realize by being an organ donor. So be an organ donor. Never give up. Get faith. Keep the faith. Don't ever give up, even when it gets hard.
Okay, great. What a great broadcast, Robin, that this has been. I appreciate you coming on so much, being from out of town and everything. You're not being at home. We still managed to get the mission accomplished, and I'm always pleased and proud when we can get a little information out there about children that have kidney disease, pediatric kidney patients. It's just so, I think it's meaningful, and it's so important to other people that are going through this experience. And what a wonderful job you did tonight. I can't thank you enough. You're a treasure. Just an amazing broadcast. Just great job. I'm truly thankful and amazed. So I've got some cleaning up I've got to do with our audience. I've kept you almost an hour. I'm going to let you go, but I do want you to know I'm very, very pleased to present your story and my little buddy Mason's story. And if there's ever anything I can do for you or your family kidney wise, just tap me on the shoulder. I'm available.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing the stories.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate you. All right. Um, any rate, folks, that is our broadcast for tonight. Got several interesting broadcasts coming up. So you know the rule. Watch this space, right? And I will talk to you again next week.